Hello, everyone, and welcome to Get Connected. It is so lovely to be here, even though we are socially distancing. And for those of you who know what Get Connected is about, it's all about connection. And we are here connecting with each other in a very unusual way, which is through Zoom. Thank goodness for technology, because without technology, we wouldn't be all here. This is our masterclass series that falls right in the middle of what typically is the Get Connected C-suite executive mentoring. And we are so lucky because our two C-suite mentors tonight have been mentors in our network for the last 4 years. And we are grateful to have both Darren Donovan of KPMG and Jean Yang of Tufts Health Plan here tonight. But for those of you who have never been to Get Connected and you are just tuning in, Get Connected is the premier inclusive business networking event that brings together people of all cultural backgrounds across industries and sectors for the purpose of breaking down barriers, building relationships that we curate, if you will, both business and social relationships, and help people across culturally divided lines become unified and build friendships and business relationships. And we also have a series of programs that are focused on developing and building skills and leadership. And so tonight is one of those forums. So let me tell you what the rule is. I want you to feel free to tweet if you want to take pictures of the gallery and send it out. We love that. Please look for the Q&A chat and please put your questions there. And I know that these two mentors will be filled with wisdom, you'll have learning, you'll make connections, and this is just going to be an all-round terrific program. So let me tell you about, before I tell you about my mentors, I want to thank my team, without whom this wouldn't be possible, led by Mirav Avishai and Ariel Lee and Lars Eric Suren, who is our producer and makes all of this easy and smooth for those who are on this side of the camera. So our first mentor is Darren Donovan. Darren has been a mentor of Get Connected for the last 4 years. Actually, he came to the first Get Connected at our first mentoring program. He had not yet signed on, had never been to a Get Connected, came to it and fell in love with Get Connected, and has since been a big corporate partner of Get Connected, sending his staff and his team to come to Get Connected, and he himself comes to Get Connected. He is a member of our CEO Roundtable, which is made up of a group of CEOs in Boston committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and who are working hard and behind the scenes to effect meaningful change within corporate Boston. So I am so grateful to have Darren both as a friend, as a mentor, and advisor, and just all-around good guy. He's one of the white men who can jump in Boston for diversity and inclusion. So thank you, Darren. He is the managing partner for KPMG Boston and strategic director for the company here. One of the things that Darren has done that I think he's most proud of is really creating a culture in the office here in Boston that really allows his team to really build and grow their career, and creating the kind of inclusive culture where people really want to belong, because you spend more time in the workplace than you do anywhere else. So you need to be able to be in a culture that makes you feel like you want to belong. And he has created that culture at KPMG. He has been the lead partner on some of the largest clients for KPMG, and has been with a partner since 2004. So I am so glad, and he just celebrated a big birthday. I'm not going to tell them what.
You can tell them. I don't care. I'm 60 years old and I'm proud. I'm really proud. Thanks.
Couldn't celebrate him because, you know, Corona came.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
And to Dr. Jean Quinn Yang, I am so glad to have her here. She is with us for, I believe, the 4th year. She's president of Tufts Public Plans, and she oversees strategy and growth for the company. She's about almost 20 years in this field, started in 2004, right around the same time that Darren became a partner at KPMG. She has worked as the executive director for the Commonwealth Health Connector, which is the healthcare for those who are unable to buy insurance and pay for insurance. She oversaw that right from the beginning. So she was the founding executive director, and she was also the executive director for integrated organizations at Children's Hospital. And now she's at Tufts Health Plan, another of our corporate partners, and we are so grateful to them. They have done an amazing job during this time, giving out sanitizers and helping to do testing and supporting all of the community health centers. So thank you, Dr. Jean.
I'm actually not a doctor. It's a wonderful thing to be talking about doctors, but I'm not one of them. Otherwise, really, really glad to be here, Colette.
We're glad to have you. I have it in your bio. Somebody. So, yeah. We'll have to get you an honorary degree.
I'll figure that out. Yes, something like that. Thank you.
Oh, I'm going to start with you, Jean, because this pandemic, one of the things that this pandemic has pointed out, it has acted literally as an MRI for the inequities that exist in our society today, both in healthcare and in economics. And when we look at people who are most affected during this time, it is people of color. And so I want to ask you, how is a company like Tufts responding to this pandemic?
That's a really good question, Colette. I have to say that when the pandemic first hit, that wasn't something that we were able to immediately focus on, in part because this pandemic came in such a huge amount of urgency. There are so many things that we had to get through very quickly as a business in terms of responding to the situation and introducing a whole host of changes, because our system as a whole was just not very well set up to deal with a crisis situation like this. As a health plan, for example, we had to change many rules. We had to stand up new capabilities, including getting to some of the most vulnerable patients who are left behind in this situation, unfortunately. Whether or not you have coronavirus, there are many, many people who have relied on the healthcare system, and the healthcare system is either not accessible or frankly just not good enough. So I would say my colleagues and I have been quite busy trying to respond to it, but sadly, it didn't take very long for us to realize a serious problem in our system, which is what you articulated. Now, the huge disparity that is in front of us in terms of the social, economic, and racial differences, I wouldn't say it was a huge surprise. We had always known that we weren't doing a great job and there were things that need to do better, but this amount of difference is disturbing and frankly unacceptable. So we're asking ourselves, not only as an organization, but as an industry, what have we missed? Massachusetts has taken big pride in our ability to provide near universal coverage, very robust healthcare benefits, and a very sophisticated, robust workforce dedicated to serving the population across the spectrum. So we felt that we were doing a good job, and now it looks like we have not really done enough. We have to rethink how we approach the different populations and how we solve their problems, how we touch people in ways that work. We probably have scratched the surface when it comes to delivering the type of support to people who need healthcare support, but frankly, along with a whole host of other support. And that is how you ensure people's security and readiness when a pandemic like this hits, because you're really leaving people out there in the cold. We feel that that's what's happened, and we feel that we failed many of our fellow citizens in the market. We need to think about retraining the workforce in a way that they can be more ready and more competent and are more empowered to support a population that needs to be supported. So a lot of lessons learned, a lot of humility that we're feeling right now. The good news is we know that everybody is thinking about this, and then there's a strong commitment to making some changes. So that's what we feel good about. It's going to be a lot of work ahead of us, but we're looking forward to doing the work.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Jean. I think that this pandemic, we are never going to go back to normal. If we go to normal, we would have failed, right? Because we have to begin to look at how do we affect changes in every aspect of our system so that we can really truly create equity and inclusion. And I love what you said about retooling and retraining, because this is an opportunity where people of color are dying because there is a lack of cultural competence and cultural intelligence. When people call or they show up or they call about coronavirus, it shows up differently in different people. And I think it's a good thing that this pandemic is really pointing out these inequities, and that Tufts is committed to making systemic and meaningful change. So thank you and Tom for that.
Thank you.
Darren, you are in the financial services industry, an industry that right now is at such anxiety for our country. A lot of companies are feeling the whole strain of this, and none more so than minority and women-owned businesses and small businesses. So I am going to ask you a question, because you are someone who does financial forecasting, to keep your clients solvent, to advise them on things they could and should be doing to maintain their solvency, particularly in economic challenging times. But I'm going to ask you from a mentor perspective, what advice would you give individually to the people who are here attending this webinar in terms of finance and forecasting, and is it really as gloomy as we are hearing from Wall Street and from everybody out there?
Well, Colette, I think that it is, serious times. I'm an optimist, and I think that optimism plays an important role right now in a time like this, but not to at all underestimate the seriousness of what we're facing. It's hard to say because we're in uncharted territory. So much of this is entirely new to us. We even recognize that some of the past experience we have don't fully grasp what we're about to enter into. I think as if you're a small business owner, you should be informing yourself of the programs that are available out there, payroll protection, etc., making sure that you're getting information about resources out there. I know the Chamber of Commerce has a small business resource center where you can get access to pro bono legal and other things like that. So really, if you're feeling alone and isolated, that's probably a sign that you need to really lean in and start looking for resources and help and information around that. As an individual, I'll go back to about the power of optimism. And this is a time to stay positive. To be a realist, but to be positive is so important right now. To think that we will get through this by working together. So lean into the positivity, be a realist about what you're dealing with now. But I would also say that if you have to think differently. What do I mean by that? If you're thinking, you're just waiting for things to go back to normal, okay, I just got to hang in there. I think you're missing the point. I think this is a time to think differently. Yeah, some things will go back to the same, but things will be different, and they should be different, especially around what you and Jean were talking about around inequalities, issues around daycare, right? Childcare. These issues have been exacerbated, so we should not go back to how it was. We should really change and go forward and provide some of these inequities some solutions to them, and I hope we do. So why you're thinking differently, push yourself to get out of your comfort zone. Right? Think about, this is a time to take advantage of the time that you're not putting in the commute or whatever extra time you have in your life. And if you don't have the extra time, take it. This is a time to take time for yourself and to think about things. I don't think we'll look back at this time and think how great it was, certainly, but we can look back and think about how special it was to, have some time away from the office, have some time to be with family or friends, even distant. I know some people living alone, some people in family groups, large households, all together. Try to find those positive times about, being home every night to have dinner with your friends. Take that advantage and start thinking about what you want to change in your life. Think about what you want as a plan. I think the secret to life is knowing what you want and how to ask for it. So I'll stop there.
Well, I think you have brought up a point, Darren, of our webinar that I did 2 weeks ago, and it was entitled "Don't Panic, Pivot." And I think you have hit the nail on the head. This is an opportunity for people to pivot. This might be the time if you're at a certain age and you're thinking, you know what, I've been in the workplace for 30, 40 years. Maybe this is my time to just retire and do something differently. And I've always wanted to be a chef. I've always wanted to be a teacher. I've always, whatever that passion is that has been lurking in the mind, this might just be the time to brush it off, bring it out, and as Darren said, think differently. And I'm with you. I am an optimist. I think that as somebody who I consider myself very spiritual, I feel that everything happens in life to teach us lessons and to help us grow and have an appreciation. And I think this is a time when we have an opportunity to really see our interconnectivity, to get connected with people that we may have lost contact with, and to really self-care. You know, I think self and distancing doesn't mean that you don't take care of yourself. This is a time to really take care of yourself. And I agree with you, Darren. So I'm gonna go back to Jean, and I'm gonna say, having not seen this pandemic, as you mentioned, coming, you know, I often say to my friends when we are having our Zoom cocktail hour, that Stephen King, in all of his dream, couldn't have dreamed up this pandemic. And I am wondering if there is advice that you would give, now that we are in the middle of it, what that we could do so that if this happens, that we are better prepared. We can kind of, you know, people are working remotely. There are people who have never worked remotely. So what are some of the things that we could do differently, or we might learn from this experience during this period of time where people are working remotely?
That's an important question, Colette, because, and I realized that for the last several months, this comes up often because no one has contemplated this. But had we had any idea that something like this would have happened, would we have done something differently? Then we realize it's more than just a theoretical exercise, what we have done, because as you and Darren have both pointed out, we're never going to go back to the old normal. So this is about learning everything that we have picked up and then embracing the new normal, hopefully smarter and wiser. And this is an important question. I think everybody, you know, depending on which hat I wear, I will have different answers. As a mother, as a daughter, I, you know, ask and answer this same question myself every day, which is actually quite an interesting exercise. But as a healthcare professional, there are definitely some important lessons learned that will hopefully accelerate our movement in the right direction for the industry. I just mentioned that some of the critical lessons learned, if not wake-up calls, where we urgently need to do something to address the racial, social, economic inequality in the market. And also we need to broadly look at the healthcare system's competency through the lens of pandemic readiness. So, for example, if you look at how the system had been set up, it was so much more geared towards maintaining chronic conditions and ongoing population health management, longitudinal intervention, which was very important, especially given the aging population where lifestyle-related illness was creating a lot of problems, and some of the prolonged economic, social issues, creating a lot of chronically present condition. We were doing the right thing, but we were just not in a great position to absorb a big shock like this, which could literally wipe out some of the progress that we had made over years. So we need to think about our competency in addressing the healthcare issues and the surrounding issues in much more sophisticated ways. As we think about social determinants of health, have we gone far enough? If we think about mental health, have we gone far enough? You know, one of the things as an example that we are particularly concerned about is in a pandemic environment where social distancing is required, how do we feel about people who are struggling with behavioral health conditions? How are they dealing with isolation? This could be a huge challenge, and the society just does not have a lot of sophisticated tools to be there to support people in timely, effective, and humanizing ways. Those are the things that I think we need to do very differently going forward. Another area would be how we work with healthcare providers. For those of you who are somewhat familiar with healthcare, you would be familiar with the concept of moving from fee-for-service to value-based care. I would say the lessons learned here, we should accelerate significantly in that direction, because fee-for-service is we reimburse for healthcare services through a visit, a unit of service, and then it's constrained by the location and the time and the protocol. If you think about what we have experienced in the last several weeks, the modality of healthcare is actually a lot more flexible than we had imagined. There are many ways to keep people healthy and treat their diseases without necessarily following the protocol procedure. So it's much more important to make sure that providers are incentivized and rewarded for being creative and thinking about how to stay connected with their patients. Whether it's in person or through other means, than having them following the traditional fee-for-service process. So I'm excited about that, and that has been consistent with the reform direction for some time. I think an acceleration is a very positive thing. The last thing, which I think is very positive lessons learned, is that we can be so much more creative in our workforce. With our workforce development and training and engagement, because remote work has overnight turned out to be much, much more feasible than many of us had anticipated. We had been able to preserve a lot more productivity than many of us had anticipated. So I would say, with the knowledge that we have today, as we think about location of talent, modality of training, engagement, and then even office culture. There are so many more things that you can do creatively to get to the right talent and give them the best experience. So, some sobering aspects, but some very upbeating aspects as well, which I think is exactly what we should get out of a major change event like this.
Thank you, Jean. You're so on point. And I particularly liked your thoughts around mental health, because we talk openly about cancer, we can talk about heart disease and diabetes, but there is a stigma that when you talk about healthcare, and we don't think about the fact, the stresses, the isolation, the loneliness and depression that some people are going through. And I think this is something that companies need to be addressing in their workforce, because people bring their whole selves to their work. And if they suffer from depression or any other mental unwellness or mental disease or dis-ease, they should be taking care of that. I am going to ask Darren a question about the financial industry. Is not necessarily crisis proof. We have seen that over the years, but it is a field that people don't often think about in terms of the full panoply of services and things that you could do working for a company like KPMG. You don't have to be an accountant. You have technology, you have law, you have HR, you have marketing, you have communications. There is a lot to within your industry. And I'm wondering if you could shed some light, if there are people on this webinar who might be thinking they are ready to make a change, and they're trying to think, what industries are out there that I could transfer my current skills to, and they're looking and saying, I'm not an accountant, I didn't go do financial in college, that may not be for me. Can you shed some light on that for us?
Yeah, thanks, Colette. Yeah, I think to your point, there's a lot of interesting things to do in what KPMG is, in essence, a professional services firm. Clients come to us to help them solve problems, manage tasks, think through strategy, help them execute on that strategy. There may be certain requirements like in accounting or tax or regulatory requirements. So we're here to help companies be successful, to overcome obstacles, but also capitalize on opportunities. So to your point, there's lots of things to do in professional services these days. We can help in different ways. Technology is becoming a very big part of our lives every moment. And now audits, tax, advisory work, data and analytics is a big part. So focusing on data and analytics is a really interesting thing to do with your career. Looking at things like blockchain, these are things that are transforming financial services industry, transforming business. Robotic process automation, taking these rote, even dare say menial tasks and having robots do them. Cyber, just risk in general, and artificial intelligence. I think in the future, you'll see the journey from being a novice to an apprentice to a journey person shortened by artificial intelligence. You know, what might take 2 or 3 years to get, artificial intelligence will put in the hands of people that are relatively new at it. So all this creates the capacity to expand into the thinking part, right? The cognitive part of problem solving that machines just aren't good at. Machines are good at order and you know, rote tasks. They're really good at, you know, dare say maybe better than humans in some way, statistically, but they're terrible at messy stuff. And that's where the creativity comes in, whether it be in Gene's field, in healthcare and the life sciences. There people are needed to solve problems. So getting into professional services to bring whatever talent you have now and maybe bringing that into helping a company solve their problems would be I think would be very interesting to people. So as you say, this lean in. There are amazing things out there. The world's changing at a rapid pace. It can seem daunting, but I think all of this change is going to create more opportunity for people.
Thank you very much. I see one of our institutional partners and sponsors, WGBH's World General Manager, President Liz Chen. Liz, this is Liz's second one, this for our CEO C-suite mentoring masterclass. And she had a question that I also had. And I'm going to ask Jean this, and this is our governor is talking about phased opening back up of our work and bringing people back into the workplace. And I wanted to ask Jean, from a medical perspective, do you feel that our state and our country is really ready to begin to bring people back into the physical workplace?
Thank you, Colette, for that question. So I think there are very obvious reasons that we want to go back. People want to go back. So there's a real need for us to get back to that normalcy. But at the same time, unfortunately, if we're looking for certain data points, statistics, trends that will give us the assurance that we should be worry-free about going back, we just don't see everything that we need to see yet. So it's a really it's a tough spot. Let's just put it that way. I would say one thing that I feel good about, just working closely with my colleagues in the industry, is that the healthcare system, even in the last several weeks, have made remarkable strides in their ability to absorb the challenge. I would say The hospitals are getting so much better at processing large volume of patients in very efficient and rational ways. So we all know that we as an industry experienced a period of chaos, if you will, when you didn't have the right supplies, when the hospitals were not configured to take on the patients, and then the doctors and nurses were not properly supported to do the work. We all experienced that. It was pretty scary. I would say there's a lot more confidence that the system is resilient enough to absorb the challenge. And then hopefully, at least for the first round, the peak is a little bit behind us. So if the worry is sort of overwhelming the healthcare system, I think we're more confident than we were. That being said, I think there's a much bigger question whether the community itself is ready to go back without a major sort of setback against the progress that we have made. So I would say I hope and I do believe some gradual reopening with rigorous oversight will happen relatively soon. Definitely not tomorrow, probably not, next week as much as we would hope, but over the next month or so, I think we will see more changes. That being said, we, as an organization, Tufts Health Plan, for example, we are thinking through systematically the things that we need to do, hardware and software-wise, to be ready for return to the office environment. We need to think about maintaining the office environment safety for employees who need to come back, and also maintaining the density of the population meaning the workforce in the building. We need to make sure the environment is appropriately configured for social distancing and sanitization and all of those things. We do think that the return is going to be very gradual, and everything that we just said a few minutes ago about the continuation of remote work as a component will continue and then demonstrate needed productivity. So we feel very good about that. Now, recognize that really varies from industry to industry. For some industries, that flexibility is much more limited. But for a health insurance company, we have been able to demonstrate very strong productivity in a fully remote. Doesn't mean that we don't benefit from face-to-face interactions, but we feel fortunate. But as a society, I think it varies from sector to sector, but we all need to be extremely cautious.
Thanks, Jean. And Darren, I will ask you this question as a senior executive in the top of your career. Over the last 6 weeks, 2 months, are there specific things that you have learned as someone who manages, a large office with many people, that you learned about the whole aspect of remote managing? And what are some of those things that you have learned, and what are some of the things that do you think that this has opened up sort of an opportunity for people who may want to work from home, for companies to be more flexible than they were? There was a time when it was frowned on, particularly for women who had children and wanted to work from home. Now, the pandemic has taught us that people can work from home and be efficient and productive, and that we don't have to be in a physical office. So are there things that you, as the head of the KPMG Boston office, have learned from this?
So there's a lot to unpack in that question, but it's a great question. I think certainly, to answer first, yeah, I think our future will certainly include some more working from home. as a professional service firm, we work from home a lot. You know, people be on the road, the dial in. So when we made the transition, it was pretty seamless, right? Everyone was equipped with a laptop. But the complexities about what people want going forward, if you would ask a working parent who has little kids at home, right? They want to they want to go back to work, right? They want the daycare to be open. Because they can't focus. They have little kids on them. But you ask an older parent who has maybe adult children coming back, they love it, right? They're getting to see them and stuff. So everyone's circumstance is different. You know, someone like me, you know, I have a house. I'm very fortunate. I got some room to spread around, go to a corner that's quiet. But if you had asked me when I was, you know, 24 out of college, you know, I had 2 roommates and we would be fighting over the kitchen table right now. And so those people want to go back. So I think it's going to make us think differently. You know, Gene pointed out safety first. You know, certainly until there's a vaccine or herd immunity, we're going to have less space in our offices. And then what will those offices look like for the future? I think, you know, executives like Gene and others are thinking that through. Like, what do we want? But we also have to think about how are we going to support people who are working from home? How are we going to support parents that are going to work from home? How are we going to support young people who are going to work from home that need different equipment and space? They're not going to have quiet. So I do think it's going to create a whole new dimension of our workforce, that some part of the time we want people to work from home. But again, how are we going to do that equitably? Right? People, when they come to the office, they have printing resources and stuff, and people are asking us, hey, you know, I need paper, I need this and that. So we have the office being this, you know, center of resources. How do we then scale that into, you know, being more virtual for people too? Those are big questions for us that we'll be tackling.
Thank you. And I think we should open this up now to the audience and get questions. So Ariel, I'm going to ask that you help me sort of steward these questions. I see a question from another of our partners, Debbie first. So maybe somebody was trying to connect with her, but so Debbie, I didn't see a question from you. So yes, there is. What about individuals who have compromised health? Is it important to make them feel safe to go to their doctors? And I think that question may be for Jean.
Yeah, we get that a lot, actually. So I thank you for that question. In fact, we wanted to communicate on this point. It's very, very important at this stage. It is 100% safe to call your doctor. In fact, you should not hesitate to call your doctor. Doctors are there, available to answer your questions and figure out your condition. Whether it is the right next step to go to a physical location, it's a decision between you and your doctor. The reason why this is so important is that we see a very concerning trend at this point is people who are delaying care because of concerns, and that actually has consequences. So we have seen many cases of delayed access to needed care that had very sad and unavoidable outcome. So this is something you wanted to be very serious about. If you have underlying condition that relies on routine access to your doctor, do not stop you know, your connection with your doctor. Please call and ask your questions.
Thanks, Jean. This question is for Darren. Darren, is it possible to make a career change into consultancy, not necessarily finance/accounting? For example, if you are in human capital in a nonprofit or government, is it possible to make that transition?
Yeah, it definitely is. You know, what consultants do is they provide organizations' expertise, capacity to problem solve. So if you have a skill set, some expertise, experience, that's something that companies need. Generally, companies are trying to solve problems like they're producing a product or good or service, and then they'll face unforeseen circumstances or new challenges in transforming their business, and that's where consultants can come in and help. So if you're in human capital, it could be a people and change thing that one company's trying to merge to, and their people issues. So yeah, consulting is open to every expertise. I think if you're interested in talk to some consultants and see, there's lifestyle and there's ways to put advice together, and I think you want to explore a little bit what it's like to deliver a product as a consultant. What's the lifestyle like? Travel is usually a big part of it. Talk to a consultant. But I think, yeah, anybody has this, been in business, and if you're a junior person too, it's the same thing. You can get on and join a consultancy and learn, learn from more senior people.
Thanks, Darren. Jean, someone wants to know, how did you get into the healthcare industry?
Well, I actually started my career in a similar capacity as Darren. I was a consultant for McKinsey and Company, and I actually served financial services clients for some time, and I was not competent at all. So I have to say I was just not smart enough for financial service for some reason. But then, and then I got transferred to my first healthcare client, and it felt like things made a lot more sense to me. So maybe there's something going on there. But this is how I started in healthcare. It was a little bit accidental. It was a healthcare client that I served out of graduate school, learning a lot of healthcare. And then I think the reasons that got me into the industry then, and then I never left. So I went into healthcare and I just never left, even though it was accidental. The reasons that got me there then are actually the exact same reason that I feel healthcare is so worthwhile as an industry, for me at least right now. One is that if you want to feel good, in terms of your ability to serve people directly and have impact that are up close and personal, you want to be in healthcare, because if you want to deliver real services to people, giving people health and comfort and security, this is where you can have a lot of opportunities. And this is what we're doing right now. There are many, many heroes in healthcare right now, and then we know exactly why. There's so much respect that we have for them. At the same time, healthcare is an industry that has so many problems. This is how I felt when I first got into healthcare. I said, well, I could spend 10 years here without getting tired of working, because there were so many things that need to get done. And then we're here again. So, every few decades that you realize that we have to take on a lot more things. And that's a challenge, but it's an excitement as well. I would anticipate a lot of new things coming out of healthcare in the next few years. Not to say it hasn't been a fast-moving industry, but it's going to be even more so every time there's something like this happen. So I would say this is an industry, and it felt to me then, feels to me now, that you will see a lot of innovation, you will feel a lot of humility, and the combination of those two, plus many other things, make it a very worthwhile industry for me personally, and then to numerous colleagues that I work with as well.
Thanks, Jean. I'm going to ask Darren this question from one of our people in the audience. It sounds like it's coming from a mom. So I'm not a mother, but I play one to a number of my mentees. They said, it is good to have the opportunity to change your career, but how about the need to hire young students who have just graduated and companies during this pandemic thinking about giving an opportunity to these young people. A lot of them are frustrated because they have sent out job applications and they haven't heard back from anyone. So is there any advice that you could give, Darren?
Yeah, I definitely can feel for young professionals. It can seem really downright scary right now. I've lived through things, nothing like this, but I've lived through, recessions and other crises and stuff like that. And you will get through it. That's the thing to believe in. But you need to stay engaged. If you've made a call, make a second call. You sent an email, do a follow-up. You don't want to be, seem harassing or too nudgy, to use a phrase. But lean in, stay engaged, follow up, explore different options. This is a time to really reach out to your network. I think a lot of young professionals sometimes can feel really intimidated about asking for help. Maybe they feel they've been raised polite and it's not polite to ask for help or impose on people's time. You should forget those ideas. The biggest obstacle you'll probably be facing right now is the voice in your head that's saying, I can't, they won't let me. Forget that voice. Just continue to push forward. We need people. We're going to get through this, and who knows, there could be, and most likely will be, new opportunities. Yes, some businesses will have a hard reset, but that's going to really create opportunities for them to bring new people, young people in to help them with that reset. Other businesses are going to grow from this. So don't be dissuaded. Yeah, things are a little rough right now. There's a lot of bumps. Things might take a little longer for people to get back to you. There's a lot of distraction, but they will need you. So just keep going. Don't give up. Keep doing research. Start making contacts. Engage your network, right? Get connected. That's what tonight's all about. Asking people, as we said a little while ago, you got to know what you want to do. Let people know you're good. Put that together and go forward and find your path.
Darren, beautifully said. And if I can add, as the queen of connection, one of the things you should think about if you are a young person and you are not on LinkedIn, you should be. LinkedIn is a great way to connect people, and don't just go the traditional way of job search, go through, put yourself also on the LinkedIn job alert. So they will send you jobs that are suited to your particular interests. So that's a really good way. The other thing is go to the Get Konnected website. We also have job listings there. Right now, we are upgrading and updating our site, so it's under some construction. So we'll be ready to go again next week, and many of our corporate partners list jobs with us. So go there. And I agree with Darren, network, network, network. Remember, I always say this, your network is your net worth. And there are so many avenues that you can network. And tune in, because Get Konnected is going to do something for the graduates around job search and where the opportunities are. And if you have a copy of this week's Boston Business Journal, you can also go online and Google it. There is an op-ed piece that I wrote in partnership with Chandler, the CEO of the YW Boston, and Danny Monroe, who is the Chief Diversity Officer of Partners, the largest employer in the state. And we talked about the need for companies to think about keeping and hiring diverse, particularly among Gen Zs and millennials, because they are the single most diverse and the largest group in the marketplace today. And they come ready with technology, they're technology savvy. There's a great way to blend them with the boomers who are a little less hesitant around technology. They can learn from each other, and they can learn from the boomers about management style. And there is a great opportunity for blending and learning. So yes. Well, let me see if there are any more questions. I think, yes, there are a couple more. What professional organizations, this is for Jean, do you belong to? And do you listen to any podcast? Or if not, what do you read for inspiration? From Jaime Villanova.
I don't know about professional organization. I participate in a board of a couple of nonprofit organizations related to healthcare or not, but that's probably where I would spend my professional time outside my day job. I am not a podcast person. I think I'm a little bit old school. I do like to read whenever I have some time. I'm actually rereading right now Catherine Graham's autobiography. This is the book that I've read many times. This is just sort of my own icon of female leadership, and I think it's something that I find very, very special. For those of you, it's very long, it's about 900 pages, but for those of you who have the time and patience, I highly recommend it.
And I'll ask the same question of Darren.
Yeah,
He wanted to ask you that question. What professional organizations do you belong to? Do you listen to a podcast? And what do you read for inspiration?
I do belong to a bunch of professional organizations. I think those changed throughout your career. Earlier in my career, when I was doing consulting, I was in some financial services organization professions. Some things about I was in the forensics practice, so I would network with those people. I think those are very, very important. To get connections, you can lead to jobs. People know. When you're LinkedIn's terrific when a job's posted, but you really want to get that early, hey, we need your expertise. You want to know someone like Jean, who knows exactly what her organization needs, and she can tell you before they even post it what they're doing. Sorry, Jean, I don't mean to be getting you inundated with things, but you can get to know people in these organizations. So find out what you're interested in, either what you're doing now and what's the professional organization that supports that, or if you're interested in getting to that profession, you can join those organizations too. Don't be intimidated. You can go hear lectures and get some networking done. So definitely do that. Like Jean, I'm not a big podcast person, but there's one I do listen to that I love. It's called Hidden Brain. I like to listen to NPR. I'm a big NPR fan. I listen to NPR every day. And, Shankar Vedantam is a social scientist, if I have it correctly, and that's a fascinating one, Hidden Brain. So listen to that podcast. I think that's very entertaining, and you can learn a lot too. And what was the last part of the question? Sorry. What
do you read?
Oh, right. What I read. I read everything. I read everything. I read all kinds of newspapers, magazines, try to stay current. But like right now, I'll show you what I'm reading right now. I'm reading this. It's the Daily Stoic. So I just am fascinated, about Stoicism at just about this time. So if something occurs to me, and being Stoic is getting, in simple terms, getting through hard times. So I'm always like looking to see if there's something that's impacting me now, making me feel down or intrigued. You know, I'll go out and see where the best material is to read about it. But I think it's a great way to transport yourself.
And my other question goes to Jean. One of our audience members is saying she has a master's degree, but does not have an MBA, is thinking about going back to get an MBA. Is an MBA necessary for working in the healthcare or managed care industry?
The short answer is no, it's not necessary, but it's helpful. The reason is I know many talented and successful healthcare professionals that have MBA trainings, but there are also who do not have MBA degrees. It could be Masters of Public Health or medical degrees, or even other social science or natural science degrees. So it's really, healthcare is it's just a very diverse field. So it's the specific technical training sometimes is not the most important thing. It's really where you feel you can grow the most and be challenged the most, and then get to know the right people.
Thank you. Let me see if there are other questions. Said head, okay. What says I have a master's? No, these are just people saying thank you. And yeah, is it possible to, yeah. Okay, these are people just saying thanks to Get Connected, thanks to Darren and Jean. And I would like to thank both of you. You have been an amazing CEO, C-suite executive mentor. This is your 4th year, both of you. I thank you for that, and I hope you will continue to do that. And I hope that next year, God's willing, we can return, I'm not going to say normal, but to our new reality, where whatever that may be, whether it's in person or in some other way. I would also like to thank my team, Mirav and Ariel and Eric, Lars Eric. Thank you so much for making this possible. And to everyone who have been here, thank you for coming. Thank you for being a part of the Get Connected network. Keep coming. We want to make sure that we stay connected with you, that we offer you the best of the best, and that you will keep supporting us. We are working on some new exciting offers and offerings, and you will hear more about them. So thank you all, and do have a wonderful evening and a fantastic rest of the week.
Thank you, Colette. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Darren. Thank you, everyone.
Same here, Jean. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Be well, everybody. Stay positive.